Because that is what you have spent your career doing.
What's wrong?
Speaking through. Let me finish this. And Tarek comes here one day and says, we fellow Europeans, we all speak to each other as fellow Europeans.
I'm a British female. I love this country and I give this country. Now you're calling me a problem. I don't think I am. I think you are. If you had a daughter or a son that wanted to become a Muslim, would you be happy about that? I don't think so.
Why is it that only Islamic societies and mosques in this country are places which teach and preach hatred of other minorities? Every single week in this country, there are people on campuses who teach the murder of minorities.
What starts as a simple discussion quickly spirals into one of the most chaotic exchanges Douglas Murray has ever faced. When a confident young Muslim speaker steps up, convinced she's about to expose Douglas as a racist. But stay tuned, because the moment she begins talking, the tension snaps into place and the whole room shifts. And what follows next is a sequence of reactions no one in that hall expected.
The discourse that you have is helping to nurture this sense of alienation and not to let the Muslims feel that they are at home. And out of the questions that we got from here, people are saying, you are welcome here, and then in their own country. I'm sorry, I'm at home. I'm at home. What are you talking about? Don't talk about. So, talk to me. I'm sorry. Talk to us, or talk to me as a fellow European, and not as someone who is an outsider infiltrating the freedom of expression and using this. This is one. Let me finish.
Can I come back to that? No, I'm not saying you're not a European, but I would appreciate the following.
The first interruption comes almost instantly. Douglas tries to answer, but he's hit with accusations about alienation and not treating Muslims as Europeans. But hey, pause here, because Douglas doesn't let the framing slide.
Which is that don't come to this hall and tell this hall that you're a European, and go to another and talk to an Islamic audience as Islamic brothers. Because that is what you have spent your career doing.
What's wrong?
Speaking through. Let me finish this. And Tarek comes here one day and says, we fellow Europeans, we all speak to each other as fellow Europeans. And another, he speaks to a Muslim audience and says, we as Muslims. Which is it, Tarek? Which is it?
Then the topic jumps to terrorism and 9/11. The moment he mentions who actually committed the attacks, the room erupts in boos. Not boos for an opinion, but boos for a fact, which tells you everything about how charged this debate already is.
It says that Europeans associate Islam with violence. There is some truth in that. There is also a very obvious reason for that, which is that Islam is associated with violence. It was not Buddhists who flew planes into the Twin Towers. It was not Hindus or Jews that blew up the London Underground in buses a few years ago. And that simple fact has to be acknowledged if you're even going to start a dialogue. Now, what is happening, ladies and gentlemen, it's not a pantomime. I'd argue that Europe has done not too badly, considering the circumstances. In the middle of the last century, there was an almost negligible Muslim presence in Europe. At the turn of the 21st, in Western Europe alone, there were 15 to 17 million Muslims. That's a very fast migration, ladies and gentlemen, one of the fastest in human history.
As Douglas explains the speed of demographic change in Europe, you can see the room getting agitated. But watch closely. Every time they boo, he becomes sharper, more precise. It's almost like their outrage fuels him.
And no society would find it easy to deal with that kind of migration. As it happens, European societies, Western European societies have, I think, dealt with this much better than some would. Certainly, Muslims coming to live in Britain and in Western Europe enjoy more rights and better rights, among them freedom of worship, than they do in any Islamic country in the earth here today. We do have a problem. We have a problem when the failures of Islam throughout the world, the failures of all Islamic societies, come here into Britain. Their intolerance of freedom of conscience, their intolerance of apostates, their intolerance of freedom of expression and freedom of speech, their intolerance of minorities, other religious minorities, sexual minorities, their intolerance of gays, their dislike and distrust of half of the population, women, and many, many other things. And the call, what's more, for a parallel legal system within Britain and European societies. This is monstrous. No other group behaves like this.
And while he pushes into territory, the audience clearly doesn't want to hear the intolerance within Islamic societies that spills into Europe. The room falls quiet, as you can literally sense people wrestling with the reality he's describing, even if they don't want to hear it. But keep watching, because things escalate right after this.
Asks for parallel laws. This is a fundamental problem, and it's one we're going to have to deal with. It's a problem between a society, Western Europe, that believes that laws are based on reason, and Islam that believes that they are based on revelation. Between these two ideas, I'm not sure there is very much compromise for Europe. It is not Europe that has let down its Muslims, but the Muslims of Europe that have let down Europe. This is not solely something which we have to say we can never reconcile. Of course we can reconcile this, but we need to be honest about it. We need to be frank about it, and we cannot avoid things just because they are unpleasant. And if there were one thing I would wish Muslims in Europe could learn today, as fast as possible, it would be this: that you have no right in this society not to be offended. You have no right to say that because you don't like something you can commit violence, or you would like something to be stopped or censored. You have no right to have more hate laws or hate crime laws or hate speech laws.
Here's where the debate heats up even more. Douglas starts breaking down how intolerance towards speech, apostasy and minorities shows up in certain Islamic societies, and the reaction in the room is instant. You can actually feel the pressure rising as Douglas calmly walks through points most people do not want to hear. And stay with this part, because the tension from this moment carries straight into the next confrontation.
I'm a British female. I love this country and I give this country. Now you're calling me a problem. I don't think I am. I think you are. Second point is, as a Muslim female, okay, my parents might not let me go somewhere late at night because people are racist to me. They tell me to go back home and they hurt me. I got hit by 2 white guys and they laughed at me because I'm a scoffy, okay? Last point is to Mr. Fleming, about the point where you said about the religion, changing religion. Every person has the right to. No one says anything about that. But if you had a daughter or a son that wanted to become a Muslim, would you be happy about that? I don't think so.
There's a big debate at the moment in Europe, isn't there, in France in particular?
Then a young Muslim woman steps up, accusing Douglas of framing Muslims as a problem. And here's the twist. Pay attention here. She delivers it with full emotion, expecting Douglas to backpedal, but instead, he responds with calm clarity, separating real prejudice from legitimate debate. This is the moment the conversation flips.
Are likely to feel hatred for other groups. That is one of the things that has to be tackled, and everyone, I think in this hall, I'm sure, we're in agreement that that should be tackled. But do not mix up somebody, a thug, a racist, and so on, attacking somebody in a street with the right of Fleming and me to say what we see in the Quran, what we think of Muhammad, and maybe even asserting our right to say so.
Okay, all right. Now,
I just had a question to a few questions to Mr. Murray. I don't think it's the Muslims of Europe that have failed, the Muslims of Europe that have failed Europe. I think it's exactly the opposite. One of the things you said, it was actually a few Muslims, crazy Muslims, I think, who sort of flew the plane into those buildings. But was Hitler a Muslim by any chance? Because I'm not sure that Muslims had anything to do with the Holocaust.
okay, I want to take very quick ones then. Okay, this lady.
What is she talking about? What is that relevant? And yeah, Muslims did have something to do with the Holocaust. You know Hajj Amin al-Husseini, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem?
The host tries to jump in and asks Douglas if he regrets that the woman feels targeted, but then he draws a sharp line. Prejudice is wrong, yet it doesn't erase the right to critique ideology. This is the moment where you can actually see the hall divide.
I just had a question to a few questions to Mr. Murray. I don't think it's the Muslims of Europe that have failed, the Muslims of Europe that have failed Europe. I think it's exactly the opposite. One of the things you said, it was actually a few Muslims, crazy Muslims, I think, who sort of flew the plane into those buildings. But was Hitler a Muslim by any chance? Because I'm not sure that Muslims had anything to do with the Holocaust.
Then another speaker claims Islam empowers women. But Douglas responds with a line that stops everything that was progressive in 7th century Arabia is not progressive in modern Britain. And right there, the entire debate loses momentum as his calm facts overpower every emotional claim thrown at him.
That only Islamic societies and mosques in this country are places which teach and preach hatred of other minorities. Every single week in this country, every single week in this country, there are people on campuses who teach the murder of minorities. Last week, it was somebody who calls for the murder of apostates. The week before, at another university, it was somebody who believes the Jews are fair game. This is not tolerable. It is not tolerable for Muslims. It is not tolerable from anyone else. You, I hope, would agree with me that any minority that engaged in such hatred and bigotry should be criticized. Don't pretend that the cloak of Islam and Islamic belief and religious fervor means that people like us cannot say that people who call for the murder of minorities are not mainstream, are not acceptable, and have to be critiqued.
If you think this was intense, the next breakdown goes even deeper. Stay tuned for the next breakdown. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.